Hello. Welcome to today's show. Today I have Senator Peter Galbraith, Democrat from Windham County. Nice to have you here with us today, Senator, and thanks an awful lot for coming down and
great
giving
to
us
be
some
with
time.
you, Daryl.
So listen, first year Senator, how was your experience up there in the State House?
Well, I've enjoyed it immensely. There's really no greater privilege than representing the people who've elected you. And this session, we've been dealing with some incredibly important issues, the most important of which is coming up this week, which is the future of health care in Vermont. The legislation that I hope, will enact is going to shape health care in Vermont probably for the rest of the century.
I was very happy to see Senator Mullen, who is a friend of mine. I liked him, a Republican, somewhat conservative on some issues, go along with that vote. He has an amendment in there, but that was really nice. And I think you got some bipartisan support on this in the Senate. So is that correct?
Absolutely. This passed out of the Senate Committee on Health on a 5-0 vote.
Beautiful.
Mullen, who's the deputy Republican leader, supported it. He had amendments that I think were constructive. I kidded with him a bit because after casting that vote, he then went up to the event with the chairman of the Republican National Committee, who had been the sponsor of the governor of Wisconsin, who stripped away the employment rights for the Republicans. I said, Kevin, how are you going to talk to him having voted for something that's to the left of Obamacare?
Yeah, long car ride. They probably didn't talk about that issue much, I imagine.
No, I imagine not.
Yeah. Okay, and I want to get back on the healthcare because that's big, but being that you were a diplomat, okay, and this is the first thing I would want to know is how that experience being a diplomat had to help when you go up there, but where did you see there had to be some good benefits there.
Well, I think there's some benefits to being a diplomat. One of the things you learn as a diplomat is you can't focus on people's positions. They say they have a stated position, and then the other side has the opposite position. If you listen to the two positions, there's no common ground. But what I like to do is to go behind the positions and find out if they're common interests. And so people may be opposed to the Shumlin proposal on health care. They may be for it. But you do find that they have a common interest in getting as many Vermonters covered with health care. They have a common concern about the economy, the strength of our economy. They have a common concern on fiscal issues. And so you try to find common ground. And frankly, that's exactly what a diplomat does.
That was a very good answer right there, and that's exactly what I was hoping you'd kind of say, because that's what you need up there. To be honest with you, I mean, and you've been saying that even when I first was interviewing you before you were elected. So, whoops, here goes my microphone. So I'm very happy to hear that hasn't changed. And on healthcare, everybody says the same thing. It's just getting to that point has been one of the big sticking points, and the wall was so high that hopefully it's starting to just come down a little bit, and you guys are able to do that.
Well, I think we are finding common ground on health care, and I think that's important. I think we need to step back and think what exactly is our goal. I think people talk about single payer, they talk about all these other things, but really those aren't our goal. Our goal is to make sure that every single Vermonter is covered by high-quality health care. And if we need to have a little flexibility, keep in mind some of the concerns of our Republican colleagues. As long as we achieve that goal, we will really have accomplished something, and that's what I'm trying to do.
That would be so huge, in my opinion. But I think you guys are taking the first steps. I think we got everything in place. I mean, the mentality is there with the legislators, and I understand the legislator, the Republicans do have some issues, but I think that you got a good groundwork. It seems like everybody is trying, and you can't ask for more than that. Listen, you happen to serve on a committee that, when I was up there, the chair of the committee, Vincent Annluzzi, senator up in the Northeast Kingdom, who I had a lot of respect for, We had our arguments. He's a tough fellow to deal with at times. But he's the chair of the committee you're on, which is a very active committee. And I know now, don't you have broadband coming up soon? Which is gotta be your committee's main issue.
Darrell, we passed broadband legislation out of the
beautiful.
Senate.
The whole Senate?
Out of the whole Senate
my goodness,
on
that's
a
great.
29-1 vote.
Oh.
This is a bill that will clear away the regulatory hurdles without weakening our environmental standards, simply speeds up the process so that we can take full advantage of $180 million in federal grants. And Windham County is going to be a double winner on this because 30 million of the grants is going to SovereignNet to construct what's called the middle mile fiber optic system. It will hook up hospitals, schools, town offices, libraries in Windham County with a very, very fast network. And to which then businesses and others could tap into it. But beyond that, we are also going to have, under a VTEL grant, what is called a 4G LTE wireless system. This is the state-of-the-art technology.
Yeah.
It uses a long wave radio, long radio waves in the 700 megahertz area. And the beauty of it is, because those are long radio waves, they can go up and down our valleys, around the corners, and they don't require new towers. So we'll be able to do this without new towers, using just with attachments to the existing ones. And we'll have a technology that exists in some of the most advanced places in the world. And it will, what it will mean, it'll be huge for our economy, because it will mean that people will be able to work at home and do the kind of high-paid jobs that our talented population can do, that you'll be able to do graphic design or advertising, accounting, writing, research, producing video, all from your home, things that you can't do without this technology. So this is going to be a big step for the future, for the future economy of Windham County. It'll be huge for our kids because they'll be able to do distance learning. It's really going to revolutionize things, particularly in our rural areas that haven't had access to broadband.
Okay, now we've been hearing that, all right, and now I think we are going to get there because I've been reading too. When is this when are we supposed to start seeing something happening?
Well, this is the beauty of it. These grants, in order for these companies to actually get the grants, they don't have the money yet. They only get the money when they complete the work by 2013.
Okay, beautiful.
So they have a real incentive to complete the work by 2013. That's why the bill, which I'm proud to say I co-sponsored, is so critical, because it will allow them to get the work done in that time frame.
Beautiful, and that's workable, and that's doable in my opinion. Now, you mentioned SovereignNet getting a good chunk of money. Was that a little bit of an issue with the chair?
You bet. Vince was concerned about the SovereignNet getting it, because they actually did it in a collaboration with the Vermont Telecommunications Authority, the VTA.
Yeah, and he wasn't in the loop?
Well,
did
whatever
somebody
reason.
forget
But the fact was that he objected to the fact that VTA was both a regulator and participating in the grant. Now,
Yeah, he has a point somewhat.
Well,
but
in
come on,
theory.
we do got to get going.
But we've got to get going,
Yeah.
and this was the only way to get the grant. So, in the end, this was federal money. If it didn't come to Vermont, it wasn't going to go anyplace else. And we're lucky that SovereignNet is a local employer in Bellows Falls, and so we're going to be the beneficiaries of it. So,
and it'll help a good Vermont company.
this is helping a good Vermont company.
Okay, now we're getting toward the end of this session. You guys have got a May 7th ending date. Good luck with that. What do you have going on right now that won't make it through this session, but means a lot, something that you're going to want to be dealing with when you go back up in the next round?
Well,
other than
Frank-
the broadband again.
Well, first, actually, although the session has been, Senate session's been slow even by historical standards. Nonetheless, as we get to these final weeks, it's going to be very productive.
Yes.
We've done broadband. We are going to do health care. Again,
And that will come out this year, huh? John Campbell at one time said there was too much work to be done. He didn't think it was going to, which kind of scared a few of us, but is he?
I think it will happen
Yeah, I
this
thought it
year.
would too.
It will be universal coverage. There may be some exceptions to the single payer model, but that's not important.
That's all right.
You know, when Social Security was set up, it only covered half the people in the country. Over time, it got everybody, and it is it's really very hard to construct a pure single payer system.
Yes.
And when you're just one state, if we were Britain could do it, but they were a country,
Right.
and Britain might not be able to do it today as they did when they did it in 1947 because they've got all the European Union issues. So, but we're going to cover everybody. That's going to be the key thing.
And that is key because when you look at our outcomes, the state of Vermont ranks very high in our health outcomes, which is very important. It's critical for our education. What we just had Valerie Stewart on, and we do quite well in education, and I think that is partly because of the health of our children also. I mean, very small, but I really, so, you know, I think Vermont is a step ahead of most.
It is. So anyhow, the truth is I think we'll get the big things done this year. From my point of view, I hope that in the next session we'll be able to put more focus on some of the environmental issues.
Yeah.
We've been in a recession. There's not much pressure for development and probably won't be for a number of years to come. I think it's a great time to take stock with our environment to see
Good point.
you know, what steps we might take to better protect our resources here in Vermont. One of the concerns that I have, and it's shared by the environmental groups, goes to forest fragmentation. I think what we know now about if we're going to be interested in biological diversity, if we're interested in maintaining our landscape, we need large tracts of connected land. And there's been pressure to cut it up with roads and building. And so I think that we ought to take a look at that and see whether we shouldn't strengthen Act 250 to make it an important criteria that we avoid forest fragmentation. I'm going to look at legislation probably to introduce next year that will try to do that. And I hope that we will be able to do some of that next year. Of course, the other big issue this year is the budget. It's, as you know,
I was gonna
a
have
big
that.
issue every year.
Yeah, but this year's got to be painful, and that was one of my. I wanted to talk a little bit about the budget process. So since you brought it up, you know, roll with that. What's, you know, I mean, holy mackerel, you guys, that had to be awful.
Well, we've had a. I mean, the estimates of the shortfall have ranged from somewhere around 120 million to 180 million, depending on what and how you're counting. And that has led to a number of painful cuts, particularly in social services. It is a sad thing that when we cut state government, if the burden falls disproportionately on those least able to absorb those cuts. But that's because the state government, unlike the federal government, services in a certain way disproportionately benefit those at the who are less well off. So that's where the cuts are. I'd like to see what we can do to minimize the impact, and I think it's we can't just say that no new revenue. We have to look at the tax side of the equation. I will be supporting a dollar pack tax on cigarettes.
If that can stop kids from starting, then you've done well.
I mean, I hope someday we collect no revenue from a cigarette tax because nobody's smoking.
Yeah.
But also, the people who smoke are a disproportionate burden on the healthcare system. You know that from your work in the hospital.
Yeah,
so
totally.
That's another reason. One of the other taxes that the Attorney General is pushing, I think deserves a close look, is a tax on sugar-sweetened beverages.
Yeah. I don't have a problem with that one either.
Their obesity has become
Huge.
huge. You're right.
Yeah.
But it's become the number one health issue. Vermont is the second thinnest state in the country.
You're kidding me.
But if you compare, our obesity rate is, I think, slightly over 20%. In 1970, there was no state in the country that had an obesity rate as high as 15%.
Isn't that unbelievable?
And now there's some that go up to 30. So,
well, I don't think it's just the sugar and crap. I think that's a big part of it, but I think a lot of it is also technology has put our kids on their butts more than, when we were kids, you didn't sit in front of a TV playing video games and stuff. You were outside doing something. Whatever it was, being a Vermonter, you were always outside doing
absolutely.
something. So, but I'm for that too, because I think that is a problem. And we got to get it out of the schools, which when I was in there, we did put a thing where we were trying to get them out of the schools more and putting more Vermont, milk and things like that in there.
Well, I just was visiting Leland Gray High School, and I must say it's terrific to see how that school has evolved since the 1970s. And I think it's true of our other schools. I think sometimes we ought to sit back and take some pride in what we've accomplished. I mean, the idea that a school in the West River Valley would be teaching Chinese, there'd be exchange students from China and Russia and Georgia, the country of Georgia, that students who are studying Chinese would be going to China to do a theatrical performance. That everybody would have, there'd be computers and all this terrific technology. So we've done a lot with our schools, and yes, it's expensive, but it's also accomplished a lot. But the other thing I know,
a lot more with that broadband bill too.
And absolutely, and people will be able to do stuff at home. But I also had lunch there, and the school, they now have much healthier food, fresh, a lot of it from Vermont. I was really impressed. Maybe this goes back, Darrell, to some of your initiatives in the legislature.
Well, I hope so. It's always nice when you're driving around or something and you see something you did do.
Well, that's
or
right.
had something to do with it. See, with me, it was a lot of buildings. So when we drive around, my wife hates it. I go, hey, I helped, we did that one. I didn't do anything except for saying go ahead. But it's still, it's one of the things.
It's all part of the process.
That's right.
And that really is the trick that's the business of public service.
Yeah.
You have the opportunity to connect with people. Mm-hmm. You have the opportunity to
whether it be a program or a building. I take pride in all of it. Listen, in the Senate side, you sit on two committees. We didn't really talk about what's your other committee?
Government Operations.
Oh, man. Geez, that's a good one, too. Oh, my goodness. Well, what's going on in that one? Because there's got to be, let's see, you're not talking about moving the governor's thing, have you?
Well, there is a constitutional amendment, as there is.
Doyle does that, I think, every year.
Well, this time it was Randy Brock, the senator from Franklin County.
Yeah, our former
but our chair, who is the senior senator from Windham County, Jeanette White, is adamantly opposed to that. So I don't think
she won't get it off.
I don't think that will see the light of day.
She hates that. Okay, well, that's there.
But you there you have it. I mean, I don't have a firm view on it, to be honest.
I don't care either.
Most Vermonters, according to polling,
I flip-flop on that thing. Every time I hear an argument, sometimes I'm going, yeah, that's a good point. And then I hear somebody else say something later, and I'm going, oh, yeah,
But the big issue that we've just dealt with is campaign finance. We passed out a bill, which I opposed. It passed out of the committee on a 3-2 vote. I and the Republican member from the opposite side opposed it. My concern, frankly, is that it didn't have an amendment that Anthony Polina, the progressive Democrat from Washington County, and I proposed, which would ban corporate contributions. For 104 years, federal law has said that only individuals can give to political campaigns. Mm-hmm. Corporations can't, labor unions can't. And the person
change that now. Then
no. Still federal law. I'll come back to what the Supreme Court said. That's still federal law.
Okay.
The Citizens United case is something different. And the reason that Congress did it back in 1907 was because of the robber barons and the fact that corporations were buying seats in Congress.
Yeah.
The person who proposed it was a Republican, Teddy Roosevelt. But in Vermont, we have a situation where corporations give a lot of money. I think it's tough to think that we're going to get a tax on sugar-sweetened beverages when Coca-Cola contributes to all sorts of campaigns. Some candidates get 10% of their money from Coca-Cola. But there's
That's
another
such a problem.
There's another problem, which is that when you put limits on individuals and corporations, well, an individual, they have to live within the limit, whether it's $1,000 for a state senate race or $2,000 for the governor. But corporations have numerous affiliates and subsidiaries. So the limit has no practical effect on them. A large corporation can have 1,000 affiliates and subsidiaries. You know, usually you set up a different company for a different business for liability reasons. So it really is a big loophole, and that's why I opposed the campaign finance
Was
bill.
Polina the other one? No, you said a Republican.
Well, Polina and I were the two that supported the ban on corporate contributions. The Republican wanted to leave that open, but then opposed the bill. So
Now, what in the bill, okay, it passed out of your committee at 3-2. Are you debating it right now on the Senate floor, or did it come out of the Senate floor?
it's going to go to the Rules Committee. There's some thought that the Rules Committee might kill it.
Okay, because my concern, and this is what got me in trouble when I was there, was there anything in there to make it as fair for an independent to run? What happened with campaign finance was, in my opinion, wasn't true campaign finance, because they were letting the major parties still have your staff paid for out of your, fund, and mailings, as long as there were two of you, which if you, in Windham County, 2 seats for, so the independent was gypped. Did any of that get changed?
Well, Darrell, this will
Because Polina must have wanted something there.
Darrell, this will not totally surprise you. In a bill that's produced with Democrats or Republicans, no, that didn't change.
Okay.
But we actually, to be fair, we considered whether we could change that. And here's the problem. The only way you could change it is to allow a independent candidate to set up his own committee, which would have the same role as a political party.
You're right.
And so that would mean that the independent candidate could accept 25,000, set up a committee, which would be effectively the same thing as his own campaign committee. So it isn't an easy problem to fix.
Isn't, but it's one that I hope some minds can take care of.
And so that was really the dilemma. But I'll tell you, it isn't just 2 candidates. I think it's 5 or more. And so it is a little bit different than how you just
5 or more now that you need for okay, because at first it was 2.
that would be.
Well, that's good. We're getting close. We got 4 minutes. Okay. Well, you're sitting on 2 darn good committees then. A lot of work. You must really be, keeping it burning on both ends, because both of those are very, what do I want to say, committees that do a lot of work. I mean, you guys do a lot of work in the Senate in those 2 committees. Actually, in the Senate, it seems like you guys do a lot of work on all the committees, even though the House does too. But there, you sit on one and it's all day. You guys do a morning one on one and an afternoon on the other. You still do that, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Let's see.
But just to be clear, Darrell, that's true. But I, as a senator, there are only 30 of us.
That's right.
And so I've also taken the view that it is my responsibility to be active in issues that do not concern my committee. So I will be offering amendments to the health care bill.
Yeah.
And
which is nice to be able to do too, and a lot of people do that.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as you're now, you being a freshman senator, although on the Senate side it's not quite like the House side. On the House side, because there are so many of you, when you're a freshman, you kind of like, they don't want you mucking up anything. But being a diplomat and having the experiences you've had, I'm sure weighed a lot in other people's minds there too. How have you seen being a freshman senator? Nothing. I mean, when you came in there, because you've got a lot of experience.
Look, there are a couple of ways you can play it, as you know, as a freshman. The standard advice is, be seen, but not heard.
Yeah.
I decided that really wasn't an effective way to represent the people of Windham County.
No.
That they expected, that people knew of my background and
That's right, and
experience.
we do expect you. That's a good point.
So I've tried to weigh in judiciously to pick up on issues that other people maybe hadn't thought of.
Yeah.
To some degree, focus on some of the big issues, and so that's what I've done. So I haven't been,
But you got to follow a fine line there too, because egos are big, even in either side. Okay,
Of
egos
course.
is big, and I was just also wondering at the time when you got up there how they would receive you too, going, okay, who's this guy? Thinks he was a diplomat, is he a big shot? Or I mean, you probably wouldn't see that, but I was just wondering. So it's a fine line.
Well, Daryl, it's always a dilemma, and if you do something, then somebody says, well, he thinks he's so important, but the reality is that every single one of us got there exactly the same way.
That's right.
We
You
were
earned it.
chosen by the people of our district.
That's right.
And that's really, at the end of the day, it's the only thing that matters.
And that's right too.
They're the people who hired
You
me.
do represent state of Vermont, and this is what they always told us. You're a Vermont state representative, and I was all with that, and I want to do what's best for the state of Vermont. But it was always first Brattleboro. I'm sorry, that's just the way it was with me. 2 more minutes left.
Well, these are not contradictory. I mean,
yeah.
we are part of the state, so
That's right. No,
so
we
what,
are,
what
but
is
I
good
still
for
want to,
good for Brattleboro.
and that's right. Now listen, we only got 2 minutes left. We could have gone on. You got 2 minutes. Talk to the people.
Well, let me cover another issue, which is the economy of Windham County. And in fact, I am dressed this way because I came down this morning to take a look at the Brooks House and the terrible tragedy that took place there this morning. It's an iconic building for Brattleboro, and we're going to have that's another blow to our economy. But one of the things that I've focused on is how is the closing of Vermont Yankee going to affect the economy of Windham County? We've had a very contentious debate that's gone on for 40 years about whether we should have that plant and whether it should continue to operate. At least as far as the state of Vermont is concerned, that debate is settled. And my goal has been to bring together people who are for VY and those who are against to say, hey, regardless, we have common interests. We have different positions, but we have common interests. We do care about the economy of this region. We do care about the people who work at VY. We would like as many of them to stay here after the plant is closed. They have contributed. We need to make, Entergy has contributed to charitable activities. So we need to address the hole that is going to be left. And I raised this on the very first day of the meeting, very first meeting of Economic Development Committee. Vince Aluzzi, whom you were talking about earlier, the chairman, embraced the issue. We held a hearing down here in Brattleboro. I think it helped change the conversation. Now I've got a $57,500 earmark into the bill to help Windham County address the planning process. It's a small amount of money, but it really, we've been way behind the curve in terms of, because people have been so involved in arguing either side of the case, they haven't really looked beyond. And so this is the beginning of a process. So that has been one of the critical issues with which I've been dealing.
Well, very good. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk with us and let the folks know some of what's going on up there. We really appreciate that. And keep up the good work.
Well, Daryl, thank you. Thanks for inviting me here. And, of course, I had to come since you were significantly responsible for getting me there.
Well, I don't know about that. It was all you. I just, I just wanted to do my little part to make sure you got there.
You did your part, but I'm not sure it was little.
Well, okay,
I remember
thank
you
you. I
out at
appreciate
the
it.
traffic circles
Yeah,
waving next to me. That was great.
yeah. Well, I'm glad you're there. I think Windham County is being well served, and thank you very much. So this is the end of the show for today, folks. It was a conversation with Senator Peter Galbraith, Democrat from Windham County. We thank him for being here. We thank Joe Bushy, our producer, and the editor, and the whole 9 yards are rolling. You might be my editor, so thank you. Thank you, BCTV. Till the next time, this is Daryl Pillsbury saying so long, and you guys have a good day.